Hey guys, Trent here from Trent Baynes PT, product placement. Thought I'd do a video for you guys today on different forms of eating, right? Or different diets, okay? Basically what I'm going to talk to you about today is keto, paleo, veganism, and IIFYM, or if it fits your macros. And just so you know, there's a bit of a legend here on, on basically protein, fats, carbs, low, moderate, or high. So you'll just see across here what they actually are. So I'll just start off with keto. So keto is a moderate protein, high fat, low carb diet, right? So basically all of the your energy is derived from the fats that you intake, all right? Some of the pros for the ketogenic diet is it's extremely good at allowing people to lose weight, right? Because it's so low in carb, but the fats are kind of keeping that energy up. Usually it means that they're in a caloric deficit, all right? So they're extremely good at weight loss. You get to eat some fun foods in there like bacon and butter and good stuff like that. But you don't get to eat any of the other good stuff like donuts and stuff because it's high in carbohydrates. It's really good for people who don't move, all right? So who are sedentary, have a job where they don't really do much. Okay, it's really good for them because there's not a really big caloric expenditure. And it can be quite good at helping you reset your insulin sensitivity. So insulin sensitivity is when you put carbs into your body and get an increase in insulin in the body, right? That's linked to like fat storage and energy usage and stuff. Right, some of the cons of the keto diet is that your brain needs sugar to function properly, all right? Sometimes you'll probably notice that if you haven't had a lot of carbohydrates during the day, you'll kind of feel a little bit brain foggy. You can go into a stage with keto in the first like 1, 2 to 3 weeks, is that you'll get a thing called keto flu, where your body is basically coming off sugar and glucose is its main source of fuel, and you'll feel like real groggy and like your head's all thick and you can't really think properly, and that's pretty much because your brain is needing that glucose. Your performance will suffer because carbohydrates are directly related to performance, all right? So if your performance is dipping because you're in the ketogenic diet and that's not what you want, then you're gonna have to re-include those carbohydrates again. When you re-include carbohydrates back into the diet with the ketogenic diet, if you don't do it properly, you will most likely see a rebound weight gain that will usually take you over what you actually started at before you started the ketogenic diet. So you can be really careful when putting your carbs back in. You've got to do it nice and slow. And I don't know if this is completely a con, but I believe that because it's a medical grade treatment, it's used for like epilepsy and Parkinson's and stuff like that. I don't believe that it's actually supposed to be properly used, or supposed to be used in a dieting type format, because it actually helps treat epilepsy and Parkinson's disease by allowing the body to not use the carbohydrates as fuel. Somehow it manages to fix the brain, which is fantastic. But I don't feel like this medical grade treatment, which is quite an extreme way to lose weight, is actually good for like just a normal everyday person. Okay, we're going to go into a paleo diet now, which is high protein, low carb, and moderate fat or high fat. It just depends on how you manipulate it. The good things about paleo diet is that it's super clean, like no processed foods, no additives, no artificial flavors or anything like that, artificial colorings or anything. It's just super clean and mainly organic food. Well, actually it should all be organic food if you're going to do it correctly. Usually higher in protein, which can be linked to lower muscle loss when you're weight training and stuff. So if you have a higher protein diet, usually you're able to build muscle quite easily. But this also needs to have a good amount of carbohydrates in there as well, and paleo is not really that high in carbohydrates. It's also really good for fat loss, paleo. It can make you feel fuller for longer because it is higher in protein, which feeling fuller for longer can usually lead to a little bit of fat loss because you're more of like an intuitive eater. You'll eat when you're feeling hungry, and having more protein in your diet is going to delay that as well. So one of the cons of paleo diets is that organic food is, you only eat organic food and it's super duper expensive, all right? Especially here in Australia. The energy levels can dip because you've got you shouldn't be eating dairy and you shouldn't be eating grains. It's going to be hard for you to get any sort of carbohydrate that is substantial to give you enough energy to either fuel your workouts or get you through the day. So for me, that's a big con because I like to have energy throughout the day. And it's low carb, which means that your performance is probably going to suffer and you're probably going to get a little bit brain foggy as well, but it's not low enough carb to go into keto or ketogenesis, all right? Veganism. Now, I have a good one here because I actually have two friends that are veganisms. Sounds like a cult going into, oh, I'm going to be a veganism. No, I have two friends that are vegan. And for like the protein and fats and carbs and stuff, it's usually fairly normal because we're going to think about veganism in more of a bodybuilding diet sense rather than an ethical sense. Okay, I don't really care about the ethical part. That's totally other people's choice. I'm taking it from more of a bodybuilding type diet sense. Okay, a little bit more impartial. So veganism, usually fairly normal with everything. There's moderate protein, moderate carb, moderate fat. The pros of veganism, I will say it once, maybe even a couple of other times, is that veganism is super ethical, right? So because you're not eating animals or animal products, you can feel good about the fact that you're not potentially hurting any other animals. Can be good for muscle building because you have a moderate protein and a moderate carb intake. You can also build muscle quite easily. It's also very good for performance because of the carbohydrates, because vegans need to get the majority of their fuel from carbohydrates, all right? Because that's just how it usually works. And your hunger could be lower, and that's mainly because the intake of the protein source isn't usually bigger. So like things like tofu and legumes and stuff are lower in protein, but for what they are, they're high. They're usually the main sort of sources that vegans get their protein from. It's going to keep your hunger could be lower because there's more volume to get 30 grams of protein in a serving of tofu. Okay, I'm going to read you a little excerpt from one of my friends that is the veganism, right? The vegan, he's going to hate that I keep calling him a veganism. So, this is exactly from his mouth. So when someone says they couldn't go vegan, their only real excuse is that the only real excuse they have going for them is that they like to eat meat too much to give it up, which for a vegan, honestly, is the only thing we can accept as vegans as a logical argument. From a diet side, obviously you can be healthy both ways, including, so I put it out to him that I'm healthy and he's healthy and he's a vegan and I'm not. But from a sustainable, ethical and moral side, realistically, being vegan is probably the best thing you can do for yourself, animals and the planet. Okay, so sustainability in terms of the planet, yes, that's fine. Sustainability for yourself, maybe not so much, but I'm open to debate with that. When it comes to the cons for being a vegan, protein intake is usually harder to achieve because there is such a high volume of protein and your sources are limited. It is a little bit harder for you to get that protein source in. You can get a micronutrient deficiency quite quickly. So B12 is one of those ones that you can actually struggle with to get in because usually B12 is found in animal products. So taking a supplement of B12 can usually stop the deficiency. It isn't always healthier to be vegan. It's actually true, because you can be healthy on paleo, you can be healthy on if it fits your macros, you can be healthy on ketogenic diet. That's completely up to you. It isn't always healthier to just eat mainly vegetables, okay? And one of the only other things about veganism is not really that easy to follow. When transitioning into becoming a vegan, it can be quite difficult. I know that the guy who gave us that excerpt there, his partner, she struggled to figure out what was vegan and what was not when they first started, which is completely understandable going into any sort of other diet as well. But veganism, being a vegan is quite hard, especially when you're going out to like the restaurants and stuff that don't really have a dedicated vegan option. Being vegan is kind of can be quite hard to follow. All right, now last one is the one that I do. If it fits your macros, or IIFYM. And when it comes to the protein, carbs, and fats, it's usually calculated towards your goal. Okay, so what I mean by that is that if you are training to become a bodybuilder, all of these will decrease, maybe except for your protein. But if you want to like get lean down, that'll all change. If you want to bulk up, that'll all change. It's completely different, and it evolves as your body evolves and what you want to get out of your body. So the pros of if it fits your macros is essentially you can eat whatever you want as long as it's within your calorie range. Okay, which is a good thing, and down below is also kind of a bad thing. It's one of the most sustainable. So when it comes to the research that has been done on if it fits your macros, it's one of the most sustainable long term as a diet you can continue to do forever. Okay, it's just been shown that calories in versus calories out is a great way to maintain your weight and stop the ballooning effect. Great for athletic performance because of the manipulation of your macros. Right, we can include more macros to get, include more carbs, sorry, to get a better athletic performance. And if it fits your macros, fixes metabolic damage, hands down, right? So if we can get these, your macros high enough to a point where, I've spoken to you guys about it before, to a point where our weight is not changing at a high level of calories, then we have essentially fixed our metabolic damage. And if it's low, we bring it up and we fix it as well. Cons of if it fits your macros is that you forget about the micros, just like veganism. You can, well, not forget about the micros as such, but you can get micronutrient deficiency. When you just focus on getting your protein, carbs, and your fats, you can eat chicken, rice, cashews, and that will get you a result. Simple. But you haven't included any broccoli in there, you haven't included any other vegetables, you're most likely not going to be able to poo, and you're going to feel bad. Okay, it's harder to say no to junk food if it fits your macros, because if it fits your macros, you can essentially eat it. If it fits in there, you can eat it, which can create an unhealthy relationship with food. It can get to a point where it's just a numbers game, and you just want to hit a certain amount of numbers every single day, and it gets to a point where you're not really eating for enjoyability, you are just eating because it's there, okay? And it's going to do what you think it's going to do, and it kind of becomes a little bit of a bad cycle. So hitting correct macro numbers doesn't make you healthy. So look at somebody like a bodybuilder at the end of their peak week, show day, just because they look shredded and they like are cut and big doesn't necessarily mean that they're healthy on the inside. They are struggling big time because they aren't on a lot of food, and they basically just, I like to think that they're just not as healthy as what somebody who had a well-rounded macronutrient total would be, essentially. So that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully this all makes sense for you. I know it's a long video today, but hopefully that helped you out with some of these diet choices. To me, I'm going to choose IIFYM, but for you guys, if you find that keto works well for you and your body, do keto. That's absolutely fine. If you find that veganism works, I've got to stop saying, if being a vegan works well for you and it works well for what you want to achieve out of your body, then by all means, become a vegan. If you're becoming a vegan because of ethical reasons and you've also got performance goals and body goals, then maybe you might need to lean up a little or ease up a little bit on being a vegan. Maybe include some eggs. I know it's not completely vegan, but you can have some eggs, you can have something else, blah, blah. So yeah, I'd like to stick to if it fits your macros, and that's what I teach all my other guys. But essentially, that's it. Hopefully you guys learned something. I'll speak to you later. Bye.